Yesterday, especially Professor Somaratne came and asked me, what is the significance of this panel discussion? And we have, what will be? Actually, yesterday the keynote speech has covered all aspects, whether it is philology, whether it is paleography, whether it is epistemology. All this covers when we take either for the translation or for the critical edition or even for the inscription. The main reason, first I put it for the Pali. Vichara, Vitarka. These two keeps repeated in all these meditation manuals. And in Visuddhi Magga, very clearly it has been explained what is Vichara and Vitarka. But when we take the translation, it is applied thought and sustained thought. Whether that justifies. If we know Pali, we may not accept that word. That is why we have taken the two Pali scholars who can take it up. With reference to the translation from the Japanese language, we have Professor Akira Saito and Professor Paul Groner, who has translated the complete history of Indian Buddhism of Akira Hirakawa. We have translated, no people have forgotten Akira Hirakawa. Whenever they refer, it is only Paul Groner. So this is the experience from our institute, it is from our personal experience. And then when we take the Sanskrit words, like Avalokiteshvara, Avalokita Ishvara is the correct way of splitting that word. But when we put it either in Japanese or in Chinese, Professor Charles Willman is here. The two characters always focus Avalokita and Swara. Am I correct? Yes? But how are we to give the justification for that thing? When we take Avalokita Ishvara, one who looks down upon with compassion. Ishvara Avalokita. That's how we understand with the Sanskrit. And with reference to, I request Amardev Mokran to join this. Of course, Professor Shroff also is more to do with the translation. Yes? And with reference to the inscription, actually in place of K.V. Ramesh, we wanted Amardev also along with Professor Cherapat. When we have been editing this inscription project, actually according to the late Brahmin script, it is Katak Jnanam. The word Jna has come as a Sanskrit. But the whole passage is from the Pali text where it should be taken as Katak Jnanam. So how are we to understand these things from the script to take the transliteration and then to do translation? Keeping this, and the Professor Kanigavadane is here who has translated Dhammapada into Sanskrit. Am I correct? Yes. Yes. Okay. And so these are all the aspects. Keeping that in mind, we have organized this panel discussion. It is up to the chairperson whether he wants to start with the translation aspect of it from various angles, and then for the inscription, and then how we have to do with the Sanskrit into English, Sanskrit or Pali into English, Japanese, Chinese. What are the problems that we face? Are we doing it word to word? Whether we be able to retain the spirit when we do the word to word translation, or we taking it only the gist of the theme of that particular line or the philosophical aspect which we are covering. Keeping this in mind, we have organized this panel.
Good morning to everybody. I think we should start now. Actually, I'm deeply honored to chair this session, although I thought I would be the least likely person to do so. So to begin with, first, I would like each one of you to briefly introduce yourself, and then I'm sure everybody knows everybody, but just to make sure, you can briefly introduce.
Bahulkar. Presently, I am active professor at the Department of Pali, University of Pune, and also this institute, KVS Somaya, Center for Buddhist Studies.
I am Amin the Pali. I am from Sri Lanka. I was a professor of Sanskrit University Jawaharlal now retired and Professor Emeritus.
Good morning, everybody. Amarji is my name. I teach at North Delhi, and for other activities related to my research on syncretism of religion, I am involved in Thailand. And there is one association of IAHR called South and South Asian Association for History, Culture, Religion. At the present moment, I am president of that regional association of IHR. That's all.
I'm Charles Willman, and I don't know myself. That has been a problem all my life. Who am I? I'm an Atmaka, I suppose. But anyway, I'm a rector in the International Buddhist College in Patong Chai or Korat in Thailand. That's what I do right now. I'm interested in a very wide field of Buddhist subjects, mainly the spread of Buddhism from India to China, and I've translated a few things. Thank you.
I am Jiapat Papanvitya from Silpakorn University. I teach Sanskrit at that university. I am also a fellow of, associate fellow of the Royal Institute, working on various subjects, mainly on Buddhism, Sanskrit and Pali.
I'm Paul Broner from University of Virginia. Mostly I did Japanese Buddhism. But when I was a student in Japan, I became a good friend of Hirakawa Akira. And so I worked with Hirakawa, a very, very eminent scholar of Indian Buddhism, and learned a lot from him.
My name is Robert Scharf, and I teach at the University of California at Berkeley. And my specialty is Chinese Buddhism. I'm also the director of the Center for Buddhist Studies there.
My name is Akira Saito from the University of Tokyo, and I'm taking care of Indian Buddhism in my department called Department of Indian and Buddhist Studies. Thank you.
I'm Asanga Tilakaratna teaching Buddhist studies in Colombo. I'm all right with all the, I think, other aspects of Buddhism except translating Buddhist texts. So I don't know why I am here, but since I did my graduate studies on philosophy of language and religion, perhaps I might have something to say, but I am not sure.
I'm G. Somaratna. Currently, I'm director of Sri Lanka International Buddhist Academy. So I think my involvement mostly in the research area is the editing Pali text. So I edited the Transliteration Volume 1 for the PTS, and then now I have undertaken a research project in editing the Pali Tipitaka in Thailand, with Dhammachari Institute, Wat Dhammaka. So we are producing a critical edition of the Pali Tipitaka now. We just started 3 years ago, but the first volume is about to come.
So, what I would suggest is that we treat the cross-cultural transmission of Buddhist texts as our major theme or the main theme, and underneath we can also consider the elements that are listed in the subtitle, namely critical edition, transliteration and translation. But I think instead of transliteration, we might speak about inscription. Although I was asked. because transliteration is again a very specific and perhaps very context-bound sort of theme. So we cannot, I cannot think of saying much. For instance, transliteration in Tibetan, although there is something to do, but so we would focus on the transmission as the general topic and script. Yes, then if it happens to become relevant, of course you are free to bring up the issue, so long as it is somehow relevant to the transmission of Buddhist texts. Because transmission can also mean like not only like in German there's Übertragen, like carrying over, like transmitting means we can transmit the language, the script, and so on. So there are various ways of converting, like from one medium to another. So what I would now again propose is, if you want to first say in general about transmission and what you think is the most important, so just to open up for discussion, what is your more the point that you want to make with regard to the cultural transmission of Buddhist texts? This is how I would suggest everyone make some statement, maybe again in a chronological order. This mic, is it working?
Yes, yes.
Sri Lanka, under the leadership of Mahinda in the 3rd century BCE, and then go on to other stages of the transmission of Buddhist texts in Sri Lanka. Mahinda is known to have travelled to Sri Lanka from Vidisha, area around Sanchi. Archaeological remains, inscriptional evidence, and evidence of Asoka history tell us some things about the culture and language of the region. On Sri Lanka too, we have a considerable amount of information about its culture and language, particularly the latter. Both regions had people who spoke Middle Indo-Aryan Prakrit languages. Sri Lanka's rich Githic record starts almost immediately after the introduction of Buddhism and records the gradual evolution of the Sinhala language in impressive detail. The language situation at the time of Mahinda's arrival can be gauged from the early Prakrit inscriptions. The closeness of the languages of the Sanchi region and of Sri Lanka was so great that the missionaries did not have any problem in communication. The culture of the two peoples, however, separated as they were more than 1,000 miles, could in no way have been as similar as the languages. So we can say that because of that, the transmission of text from Middle India to Sri Lanka in the 3rd century BC qualifies to be called a cross-cultural transmission. Mahinda and his missionary assistants are known to have taken the canonical texts in whatever state of completeness they had. They couldn't have been as complete as later on, as well as the commentaries on these texts. Commentaries that had developed in the Theravada Sangha in its formative period in the Madhya Desha of India. We say they took those texts to Sri Lanka, but of course they did not take any physical materials or manuscripts. When they say that they took the text, what it means is that persons went there who held those texts in their memory and who were able to recite them for others to hear and learn. The texts were in oral form. The fact that the texts are in this manner and in this form does not make it a transmission. As yet, it is only a translocation of people who knew the text. But soon, Mahinda went on to ordain members of the local population as Buddhist bhikkhus. Eventually, the Sri Lankan monks learned to rehearse the text, and that's symbolized by the first Vinaya recital mentioned in the Chronicles. And the monks learned the interpretation of these commentaries. Then the Sinhalese monks learned the commentaries in their own language. The missionaries' act of delivering the oral canonical texts in Sinhala bhikkhus and helping them to understand the interpretation in Sinhala and to hold that Sinhala interpretation in a specific genre of text. The famous Sinhala Arthakatha is the real transmission. The first such transmission in Sri Lanka it was primarily the linguistic affinity that aided the smooth communication and successful transmission. But there was also another factor, that's very important really, to be taken into account, which is the fact that the local Sinhala graphic was not hitherto used for communicating abstract thought, like that found in the Buddhist discourse. Linguistic simplicity of the Sinhala graphic can be the Sinhala prophet of which we have a reflection in the early inscription. But due to its extreme closeness to the language of the oral text that the missionaries introduced, it would not be a wild guess to say that the very vocabulary of the text could be, and indeed was, transferred into the local language, with hardly any modification. The few quotations from the ancient Sinhala commentaries that have been traced bespeak a style in which Sinhala and Pali words freely mix, a feature that is also very much in evidence in the 10th century Sinhala gloss of the Pali commentary of the Dhampada, called the Dhampiya Atua Gatpale. Thus, translating the commentary wrote by Mahinda turned out to be simultaneously an act of creating vocabulary for the abstract concepts in the national Middle Indo-Aryan language of Sri Lanka. So, in both respects of these aspects, the experience of the translators of Buddhist texts in China offered sharp contrast. It is all too evident that this transmission is vastly different from the elaborate process enacted in China for the same purpose. Translating this text into Sinhala would have also been a much easier task than translating them into the languages of Myanmar, Thailand or Cambodia, which are not Indo-Aryan languages. The absorption of a large focus of Buddhist texts seems to have tilted the evolution of the Sinhala language in the direction it took ever after. Although the Sinhala commentaries were based on material brought by Mahinda, they are also a Sri Lankan presentation and an enhancement of their material as shown by the many local events, persons and opinions that they mention, some of which postdate the introduction of Buddhism to Thailand by nearly 300 years. So that's the first transmission. The next transmission may not be strictly cross-cultural, and yet it has been taken into account because of its momentous significance in the history of Buddhism. This is the execution during the reign of Varsagamuni Abhaya, that's 29 to 17 because of the Common Era, of the resolve of the Sri Lankan bhikkhus to commit to writing the canon and the commentaries that they hitherto transmitted by word of mouth through a division of labor known as Bhalaka system of memorization. It was a fear that the system would break down and the text would go into oblivion that motivated the decision taken at the end of a period of unparalleled vicissitudes for the Buddhist Sangha, invasion, wars, drought, famine, persecution, all vividly portrayed in the commentary. The execution of the decision to write